This is Maz Amjad, and you are watching my YouTube channel, 15 Minutes with Maz. This channel is to help and guide you how you can come to United States and seek any opportunities as a PhD student. Today, we have another guest with us, and we will ask some question about the whole admission process, how you can get PhD in the United States, what are the funding opportunities, what are the scholarship opportunities, and what are the teaching assistant position opportunities available in the United States. So thank you so much once again for joining me today. And I will request my guest today to introduce herself.
Hi, thank you, Moz. I am Monica Urso, and I'm a college administrator for a PhD program.
Great. Thank you so much, Monica, for joining me today. It's been pleasure having you. And I mean, you have been serving as a administrator for quite long time. So I just wanted to learn more about your experience, specifically how we can help students come to United States so they can learn, study, and work here as a graduate student. So to begin with, would you like to tell us more about what's the formal application process for international students who would like to come to United States and study as a graduate student?
Yeah, so we often get applicants from all around the world. The application process is pretty similar to any other application. There's only a few differences. So I can kind of talk about like the, requirements and include the requirements for international students.
Great, please.
Yeah, so for a PhD program in particular, for most universities, or maybe all in the US, you do need to have a master's degree from an accredited school. Sometimes it needs to be in the field that you're looking to get your PhD in, but sometimes it's not always necessary, but just check with your specific programs department to know what they actually need specifically. So you need a master's degree from an accredited school. You also need TOEFL scores if you're an international student, and usually, and the minimum scores can vary across universities, but I can just speak to what we look for is usually a minimum score of 100 or 25 in each category. You also might want to check to see which TOEFL tests they accept. Some schools do not take every single one of them. So for example, we don't really take the IELTS, the IELTS test scores. But we do take the TOEFL and the TOEFL IBT scores. So also make sure if you have a score from like a couple years ago, or maybe more than a couple years ago, check with the department to see if they accept late, or I guess expired scores. Sometimes that's possible, but because it is an expensive test to take sometimes. And also just keep in mind if you do have to take the TOEFL score, that you're keeping in mind the timeline of when you need to have that score submitted to the school before the application deadline. Sometimes you have to set up the TOEFL score months in advance, so that you can actually take the test, get the scores, and then have them submitted while you're submitting your application before the deadline. So then some schools do also require the GRE, the graduate record exam, but not all of them. So you have to make sure that you check that as well. So you can contact the department to make sure if they're requiring that on the for the application website, and maybe contact the department to see if they're accepting the scores, and to make sure that that's a requirement for the application. And then the other thing you'll need to have is your CV. there really is no like maximum length to it. You just want to make sure you have all your information on your CV that's up to date. Always include a updated CV. Another requirement is, and this can be different for each program, but sometimes they require you to have a specific course that you have taken, an undergraduate or in a graduate course, like in a master's course. Sometimes they check the specific course to see your, I guess, your grade in that. So we require like a statistics course, and you have to have a grade B or higher. So make sure that if there is a course that you need to have, that you have it on your transcript and that the grade matches the requirement that the program is looking for. So for example, if you have like a statistics course and you have a C, and you try to submit it to with your application, it wouldn't be actually part of a complete application because you do not have that grade that they're looking for. And in that case, you can contact the school and ask them if, what you can do about that. Usually, you just have to retake the course and get the grade that you need or higher. Another requirement for a PhD program is sometimes you need to have experience in the fields, and it depends on the program and it depends on like your background. So you can ask the department about that as well. But I wouldn't let that deter you. Like if you don't have experience in the field that you're going into, you can still apply, because a lot of times they look at the application holistically. So there's not one, like if you don't have one specific thing, it doesn't mean you're necessarily out. Well, it depends on what it is, but if it's specifically about like experience, that's something that could possibly be, worked with. Then we have the 3 letters of recommendation. And for those, you also look at to see how many you need for that particular program. But if it says 3, do 3, don't do 5. Because the program is also looking at, do you follow instructions? So be sure to just keep in mind that as well. The recommendation letters, you'll also want to make sure that they can speak to your capabilities, depending on what you're going into. So as like maybe a critical thinker, as a writer, make sure they can speak to your work ethic as well. And that maybe they've also worked with you in the capacity of a supervisor, because most programs want to know, like, are you a good worker? Can you do the work that is asked of you, etc. The next requirement would be the narrative statement. And it's also called a personal statement, or what was the other thing that they're called?
It's called statement of purpose.
Or a statement of purpose. They're called many different things, but it's the same thing. And those can be up to 2 pages, but from what I see, it's usually a page and a half. And what you can expect to write in a statement of purpose, we'll use Maz's term there. The statement of purpose is basically where you have the opportunity to talk about your background, your education, why you want to study in this program or the program that you're looking into, and why you would be a good fit for it, and who you might be able to work with as well in that program. So that is the basic rundown of the statement of purpose. And what else? Transcripts, obviously. You also need a writing sample or a publication. And that could be like, and again, depending on the program you're looking into, could be mainly it's like a paper, it could be a master's thesis. Something that showcases your ability to write academically, critically think. And those don't really have a maximum limit to the page limit. So whatever the paper is, you can include it. Also, if you wrote it with somebody else, make sure you just highlight the portion that you wrote. So the program knows which passages were yours. And what else we have? We also have the GPA. It's typically 3.0 or higher for most applications.
Great. Thank you, Monica, for helping us understand. Typically, master students, when they look for PhD programs, they either do not have publications or the publication is in process. In that case, what is your recommendation? What students should do?
Well, it's okay if it's not published, so it could be any paper
Mhm.
that is, academically written for, a course or, oh, and also if you don't have a specific publication, you could also submit sometimes like writing grants that you work on, something that really just showcases your writing abilities and critical thinking abilities. And if you're not sure that you have that, I would contact the department that you're looking to apply to and ask them specifically.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. You also mentioned about a recommendation letter, and you also talked about the letter should explicitly mention whether you are a good student, you have done your all the assigned tasks. Do you have any specific example of a good recommendation letter versus a bad?
We'll see really great ones coming from supervisors, maybe faculty members that they've taken multiple classes with, maybe also like worked with as a like a research assistant or a teaching assistant. And they can really understand the student as a person and as an academic as well. Those are the best ones because they can really provide examples to their strong points. And I think if you have any experience, working with faculty or even at a workplace, those would be the best people to provide recommendation letters.
Okay, okay. You also mentioned about if students they have any question, they can directly reach out to someone in the department. Who is the best person that students should reach out specifically if they have any question regarding admission process?
Yeah, so the main person should be the coordinator. So try to look for on the website any title that says coordinator of the program. That's your probably the easiest person to get in touch with. If you're trying to contact faculty, a lot of times, depending on the time of the year, they're usually bombarded and have a lot of emails and are very busy. Not to say that they won't respond to you, but if you're finding that you're not hearing back from them, that's okay. Just try to contact other people that have like the coordinator title, or just other titles could be like maybe program director as well. That could be a good one to reach out to, or program administrator as well.
Great, thank you. Another question is that when students apply, they get an admission, they often have to prove financial statements, or they have to show an evidence that they can support themselves. But a lot of time, there are so many students internationally who are always looking for funding, scholarships, paid positions. So in your experience, what are the typical roles that many graduate students they apply and they get fully funded PhD positions?
So, yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty frequent question. So, I don't know about most programs, but it is possible that programs do have fully funded options. And a lot of times, if that's the case, then the program will have automatically positions for any incoming students, international students or US students. And that is usually in the form of, it could be fellowships, it could be scholarships, and those are all competitive. It depends on basically your whole application packet.
One of the many reasons of mentioning professor's name in their statement of purpose is also that the committee also want to know that who is going to support the PhD specifically during that time period. And when students they mention a name of a specific person, that also an indicator that the person, that professor might also be interested in supporting financially that student. Is that correct?
Sort of. It depends. So, for the first point, yes, in some instances, there should be a faculty in which, the applicant wants to work with. And I guess upon finding out if they're available or not to be, to work with, that would be something to know beforehand as well, like even before applying. So it is possible to email the faculty directly and introduce, themselves and kind of mention, why they're touching base with them, or why they're contacting them, what they're looking to do with the degree. Maybe setting up a meeting to discuss further like their research interests and how they might align. That's one aspect, yes. Whether or not the faculty says, okay, yes, I'd like to work with them. That doesn't always translate to there's funding for the student. It really depends on the program and what funding is available. So a lot of times, in our program specifically, that is the case where like if there is a faculty member that matches with the applicant, they do often work with that faculty member because they have resources to hire them on as like a TA, teaching assistant, or a research assistant as well. But sometimes it doesn't really, it's not always like that. It could be, this is your faculty mentor, and then you go work with a different professor because they have funding available as like a TA or a research assistant. But you're still connected to everybody, so it works out either way.
Great, thank you. In terms of finding positions for teaching assistant, is there any formal process that students should follow?
So it depends on the university, but a lot of times it's very much automatic. And this is different, yeah, for every program. But I guess from what I can say, in my experience is usually that if, we have a list of students that need funding and we figure out which faculty need TAs that semester. And they're basically added to, I guess the TA list. And depending on like everybody's schedules, then it depends like, which faculty you'd be working with, depending on, class time and their TA time. So that's how that would work. And yeah, sometimes it's more or less the basically really up to the faculty and the student to discuss timing.
So I think that's a very good response. So imagine there is an international student living in country A, and that student has not yet come to United States. So what's the best way that that student can look for teaching assistant positions and then can apply before even coming to United States?
Usually I don't recommend that. Because first you want to know that you're accepted to a program before you even look to know if you can have a TA position. So I think the important thing is to first be admitted. Because I think that's a good sign that the program has opportunities available. But it's also something to ask about before you apply anywhere. And usually they have that on the website in terms of like the funding of a program. So it's usually not the case where you have to look for a job before you apply. It's a matter of actually getting accepted and then figuring out what the funding sources are.
Okay, so can you just please summarize all those key points? So when any student submits an application on the university portal, and then of course, what happens after that?
Yeah, so usually on the portal, you have to submit all the requirements that I mentioned. And essentially after that, you submit everything by the deadline, of course. You basically have to wait until the applications are reviewed, and those are usually by committee. And it varies the length in which you'll hear back. So if, for example, the applications are due like early December, you might hear back maybe like February. So a couple months. And it depends on when the program is reviewing the applications and when the applications close. So keep that in mind as well.
So what are the typical deadlines for fall program and for spring program?
So I don't know the fall, spring deadlines. I can only tell you what I have for our program because they're all different across the country. So for our fall applications, those are due in December. So from December, January, February, March, it's all a review. And then by April 15th, that's the date in which students that have been sent letters of admission, that's the final, well, not the final date, but the recommended date of letting the school know if you would attend. So then that would be like early spring. That you would find out if you would go someplace or not. So then you can like prep for that fall.
Okay, and which one is your program?
This is the PhD in social work.
So PhD in social work. Okay, great. So just to summarize, so can you please just summarize again all the key points for the application requirements? And then you can also summarize all the points once the application is submitted and students are seeking for financial or scholarship positions.
Okay, so the requirements again are basically the master's degree, TOEFL score, GRE score, CV, experience in the fields, the 3 recommendation letters, the statement of purpose, required course that they're looking for. This is optional. Transcripts, the writing sample, and the GPA. Also, so then after that, after all that submitted, well, I would also like to mention though, you submit that all in the portal. Just be mindful of what the university needs from you. And try to get that to them as soon as possible. Also, I'll say one other thing about the transcripts though. That if you already know that they're gonna request them from you, you can submit a request to get your transcripts as soon as possible to the university that you're looking to apply to. Because usually I would say that's kind of a big hold up a lot of the times in the admissions process. There's like some situation that kind of slows down the application process because transcripts are sometimes hard to get from different universities. So make sure you give yourself extra time to request the transcripts from different universities you've attended. And so after you submit everything, I believe also in the portal, that's also where you can submit whether or not you need like financial aid, and there's deadlines for that too to keep in mind. And it depends on the program. Like if it's fully funded, you might not have to do financial aid. But if it isn't, then you probably will have to do financial aid and be prepared to have information for that. And then when it comes to scholarships and fellowships, you can also ask the program, but it's usually in the website, like if it's automatic that you're being considered for, and usually that's for our program. Anyone who applies are automatically considered. And then for the TA positions or any, funding opportunities in that regard, like TA or research assistant position, those typically you don't have to apply for before you apply. Again, just ask or look over the website to make sure. But usually that's something that's scheduled after admittance. I mean, there's a lot of different questions they ask me, but one that mostly, well, the one thing that I usually tell people is, if there is a program you want to attend, I would say be very proactive. Contact that professor and say, hey, I'm interested in this program. This is my background. I would really be interested in working with you. Let's set up a time to Zoom. You really want to like be, I guess, yeah, very proactive in your search for the program that you want to be in. Also, don't be afraid to reach out to the current students that are in the program and get some insight into, what they think about it. You can ask them about the program. You can ask them, how do they like faculty? What's it like? And what's the culture like? And then, yeah, I would say those are like the big things. So you can always contact them and kind of just go from there. Because you want to know like if you're a good fit for the program. And that's important. So it is also important to know like the area, the city, and if it fits your needs as well.
I think the last question is, that's a very important question, is how students, they can show and convince the committee that they are a good fit for the program.
I don't know that you can basically convince per se. But if you have very strong letters of recommendation, you have a strong statement of purpose. Strong statement of purpose meaning like you know what you want to do, you know why you want to do it, and you know who you want to work with. I think that's a really strong indicator of like which direction you want to go into, and you have an idea of who you want to work with and why you want to work with them. And I think by that point, you've already been in contact with the person or faculty that you would want to work with, so they know who you are. I think that's a strong indicator.
Is there any advice that you would like to give to all the upcoming graduate students in the United States?
Yes, advice. I would say keep going and be proactive because you're working towards a really great future. So don't be shy in asking faculty any questions because in the future they could be your colleagues.
Great. Thank you so much once again, Monica, for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And I'm sure you also learned a lot. And if you have any specific question, you need any help, please feel free to comment below and directly approach me, and I will definitely do my best to answer all your questions. Thank you so much for watching us. And if you have any other specific topic that you want me to cover, I would absolutely love to hear about that. And thank you so much for having us today, and see you soon. Thank you.